Hello, everybody. AngeloStrains here, back with another podcast topic for the AngeloStrains and Nedaj420 Productions YouTube channel. Today's topic is my work habits/work ethics. So basically, we kind of have to go back in time all the way to at least 2008, between 2008 and 2013, when I was basically a preteen to an early teenager, and then we'll eventually go through my high school days and it's basically gonna focus on what I was like during high school in terms of social media and technology and the negative effects it had on me growing up, to the point where I had to suffer long-term consequences because of that. And it took a long time, a really long time, even up to now. It took a long time for me to basically undo all of that. So growing up with social media, that one's a hard one, because I was basically I was a true gamer, I'll tell you that for a fact. I was searching, like, the first real step into the gaming world that I remember was during late 2008, early 2009. I was obsessed with this game. It's one of the old Call of Duty games. Like, I played Call of Duty 1, Call of Duty 2 as a kid, but this one, because of the gore and the amount of violence, it was so gritty, it was so surreal, it was so realistic at the time. This game was Call of Duty World at War. I was obsessed with that game back in that day. Holy smokes. I was looking up all the trailers. I even saw this rap battle in JT Machinima that had Call of Duty World at War references to it. I looked up Call of Duty World at War raps. that Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2 rap that got really famous back in the day, around 2009, 2010. Before that, there was a Call of Duty World at War rap, and I was listening to that as on repeat, and even before there was gameplay of Call of Duty World at War, I was typing up on Google, trying to search up, the characters. I was looking at the graphics. The graphics looked so realistic, so gritty. And at that time, I didn't even have a PS3 back then. I only had a bad computer with Windows XP on it. I had a PS2 with there's this rip-off of Call of Duty World at War game called Call of Duty Final Fronts. Or it was specifically for PS2. And believe it or not, I was really content with that game too, because I thought it was like, oh, this is the PS2 version of Call of Duty World at War. It must have the same themes. It must have the same kind of violence. It was a complete letdown. It felt like Call of Duty 3, but someone removed the graphic filter or whatever. It felt like, Call of Duty 3 would be an oil painting. This one felt like a sketch. They completely removed the color and the color grade and all that stuff. I wanted to step up my game. I really wanted Call of Duty World at War more than anything. And it was on Boxing Day of 2009 that I finally got my copy of the actual Call of Duty World at War, along with a $500 PS3. It was the big bulky PS3. It wasn't the slim one yet. This was Boxing Day 2009, so I don't know if they had slim PS3s there. The PS3 also came with Uncharted, which was a pretty good game in its own right. And that was literally my introduction to, like, real gaming. Before that, it was all PS2, PS1 games, me trying to simulate, pretending that I had an actual good graphics game. But now I have the actual thing, Call of Duty World at War. All these gameplays of campaign footage, everyone playing Call of Duty back on YouTube. I would endlessly look at Call of Duty World at War YouTube videos over and over and over again. People playing. I would memorize all the campaign missions and everything, and all the strategies. I think Rooster Teeth did a few Call of Duty World at War Easter eggs or things that I used to watch all the time too. And there was Hutch and C-Nanners talking about C-Nanner's first video, I believe, was Call of Duty World at War. I think first Call of Duty video, at least. And I was watching that. I was trying to get all the strategies, but I wasn't. That's a little later on. That was more of the multiplayer world that I didn't get into. So I grew up with Call of Duty World at War. Basically, that was the only thing in my mind. Even when I was growing up, I used to play with my neighbors, and we had this back street alley that me and my neighbors would play on outside. and we would mimic video games like Left 4 Dead and all that stuff. Those were really good times, and that was before the whole social media thing came on and ruined my brain and all that stuff. So you can imagine, as a kid, you're supposed to develop, a bunch of creativity, making your own things out of scratch with a stick, a rock, going outside all the time, figuring out what to do with your friends, making up all these cool games with your friends. Basically, just you're supposed to have this really creative process and development as you grow up as a kid, right? But because I grew up with video games, all my creative elements that I was supposed to develop as a kid went into Call of Duty World at War. So I would, I would find like all my creativities would be like changing my classes, figuring out what spot, like figuring out the spawn points. All my brain power went into Call of Duty World at War, and then that basically kind of ruined my creative powers for a while, and I had to deal with that consequence. I had no originality as I grew up, and everything I did was basically, strategies from Call of Duty, and it didn't really help that all my friends also played Call of Duty. I had a friend in elementary school who played the Modern Warfare 2, and instead of debating or having like these childhood games that we'd play, we would have huge fights about what was better, Call of Duty World at War versus Modern Warfare 2. I would be like, oh, in Call of Duty World at War, you could take off the limbs. You can't do that in Modern Warfare 2. You can't take off limbs in Modern Warfare 2. I shoot you with a shotgun, your arm doesn't fall off. And he would be like, it's not about the limbs, it's about the gameplay. Look at Modern Warfare 2. You have so much new classes. You have like kill streaks that you could choose from. In World at War, you only had a 3, 5, and 7 kill streak or something like that, right? So all my energy was put into that, and it didn't do me no good because I was obsessed with it. People in the outside world didn't know what the hell I was talking about. And that's also another factor, the fact that I couldn't really properly communicate with anyone outside the video game world. And I didn't have many friends in the video game world anyway. It was just me, in real life friends in the video game world. It was just me and my elementary school friend. Everyone outside, I was kind of a social outcast because of that. Because of that, it took a while for me to socialize properly. I had to go through a lot of awkward moments, a lot of social anxieties because of that. And it didn't help that when Call of Duty Black Ops 1 came out on November 9th, 2010, I know that date because I bought it the first day it came out, literally 3 hours after it came out. I don't know why. I still have a sense of pride when it comes to that game. When I bought it the first day, it was a beautiful game. Oh man, I just remembering it just brings in a lot of good memories and feelings. But it was good to experience those feelings, but if I could have it another way, I definitely would have chosen to do more real life stuff as a kid. And Call of Duty Black Ops was basically my introduction into the multiplayer world of the whole gaming aspect. Like, I've been playing single players and all that stuff, and it brought out the toxicity, it brought out the rebellious side of me, and not in a good way. It just made me reform. It brought me to a really premature existential crisis about how life is so fucking lame and shit. And as a teenager, when you have that kind of mindset, that existential kind of mindset, it does no good. It's not productive. You're pushing everyone away. And I was lazy. All I wanted to do after school was play video games, rank up all the prestiges. Basically, it was not even like, it was no good for sure. I mean, if I could have chose a different path, I definitely would have. I couldn't even concentrate in school. It was just me and my friends hanging out the corner, just talking about video games all day. Well, people that didn't play video games were out there playing sports, having creative games. And there I was just talking about video games with my friends. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that, but me personally, I would have done a lot more as a kid so that I wouldn't have to suffer through it as an adult or a teenager. But yeah, that was my that was basically a whole summary of my life as a video gamer in the late 2000s to early 2000s. And then during the mid 2000s, I'm now in high school, right? And this is my introduction to the social media world. Coming from elementary school, I was a pretty lone gamer. I didn't really have much of online friends and all that stuff, and all of my friends outside of online we just talked about video games. There was no social pressure or anything. All we like I was terrible at socializing with people in real life, and I accepted that as a kid because all I focused on was getting better in Call of Duty when I could have been doing something else, right? I started basically getting into social media. Like I had Facebook and YouTube back in the day in elementary school, but in high school, I started getting into Snapchat, Instagram. What else was there? I can only think of Snapchat and Instagram right now. But I started getting into that, and then I had a bunch of social pressures because of that. And coming from someone that didn't know how to socialize because he didn't develop it as a kid, you can only imagine with all this kind of social pressures, trying to get people's attention. I was doing all of that in a desperate measure too. It wasn't just a normal like, oh yeah, look at me for, popularity like a normal kid paying attention. I was basically trying to get attention by doing weird things, saying weird stuff, saying outlandish things just to get attention, just to try and fit in a bit. And it was all the wrong things. And it brought me to a point where doing that made me more of an outcast again. And it was a terrible experience. And because of that, I developed so much social anxiety. I didn't want anything to do with people. And then when 2017, 2018 rolled around, it was me against the world. It went from me trying desperate measures to fit in to me failing terribly at it, and then me blaming the world for the position I was in. So, because I was in a state where I no longer really cared about trying to fit in, and just me getting full of hatred, me not liking life in general, just me wanting to just get away from it all, I started not caring. And when you go through that, you start not caring about anything. So I started doing instant gratification activities like just eating junk food, pornography. What else is there? Just scrolling all over social media, trying to getting little bits of dopamine release, ruining my attention span, not thinking at all, sometimes overthinking, just feeling sorry for myself all the time. While my brain could have been learning something, my brain was preoccupied with all of those things because the whole thing just collapsed on me and I was not ready for it. And because of that, my tolerance to focus just diminished. I couldn't focus on anything. I couldn't learn anything. And because I couldn't learn anything properly, my learning curve became longer and longer and longer. And what would take a normal person something like really quickly to learn took me forever to learn. Like I remember I tested this with my friend. We had a chemistry test the day of. He studied for 3 hours and he got a better grade than me. And I studied 2 weeks beforehand because I wasn't really focused on the material. Even though I did, if I actually sat down at my desk, read through it, I wasn't actually processing the material. My mind was focusing on other things, other pressures like how do I impress that guy, or why the heck am I doing this with my life? I hate my life right now. All those overthinking kind of thing. And it was so hard to break the habit, especially with all these instant gratification activities, not caring about my life anymore, hating the world, blaming the world for the situation I was in. It was like a cry for help without actually knowing what to do. I didn't even know I was crying for help. And 2017 to 2018, onwards to 2020, I lived a life just full of hatred, full of rage, just not caring where I went in life. I was smoking weed all the time. I was drinking, especially after high school. When I entered the workforce, I was just fed up with it all. I didn't care if I died. I would sometimes just sit in bed, hoping I would never wake up the next day. And it doesn't do any good. So to as a testament to prove that I just didn't care at all, I finally said, you know what, if I'm not gonna care at all, I might as well get money for it, right? So I went to the the worst job possible, or the worst or best job possible. Actually, I don't know. It's all a perspective on how you see it. Nowadays, I think it's probably the best thing I could have done, but back then, I was like, I want a job that just completely demolishes me completely because I do not care anymore. So I took in construction. I was a laborer. I was the bottom of the food chain, the hazing ground for everyone just to lash out on me. And you know, in construction, at least in my experience, it's a very toxic environment. Very, very toxic. No fucks are given about you. You're basically a cog in a machine, and people they will if they do not respect you, they will disrespect you to the fullest. You have to earn your way to get respect in that environment. And at first, I didn't know it because I'm so used to the protected environment that the educational system provided for us. And now that I was out into the real world, working a job where you get hazed all the time, just people non-stop bullying, or if that's what you want to call it, just basically toxicity, that I was out of my mind. I was like, what the fuck is it? This is so fucking stressful, you know? But I needed money at the time. So I went on working. I kept persevering. I also wanted to test how much I just could take, you know, before I reached my breaking point. And I was literally living day by day, wandering through life, not caring at all, just working, going home, working, going home, working, getting shat on, you know, spit on, just basically people fucking. Because I was the bottom of the food chain, like I said. No one respected me, no matter how hard I worked. And I realized slowly and slowly as I worked that job, months would go by, and then I realized I didn't want to be in that situation anymore. And I got to test out the consequences of growing up with a short attention span, with everything, wanting to see, desperately trying to fit in. All of those came to a close when I got that construction job, because all of the consequences of that just piled up and literally shat on me in that construction environment. I saw everything I did wrong firsthand. Like, for example, I was doing things half-assed just because I wanted to look good instead of actually learning, taking time to learn how things are done, which is a result of me not actually giving time for me to really slow down when I was growing up. When I was growing up, social media was so fast-paced. I wanted to fit in at a fast-paced level. I wanted to see the results fast without actually working, you know? And that collapsed on me when I was in construction. I wanted to do all those things so badly at a fast pace that I started doing things half-assed, you know, projects and tasks in the construction site. I was doing them half-assed just to, and at the end result, it looked good, but how it was done was not good at all, and I got shat on for that. It was terrible. It was hard to break that habit, too, of doing things half-assed just for the clout, you know? I was like, you know, if it looks good in the end, that's all that mattered, not realizing that the whole foundation is going to break down if I don't do it properly. If I make it look good at the end, but, you know, the whole foundation is not done properly, the whole thing collapses. And I had to learn that the hard way. And because I learned that the hard way, you know, because of that, I had a lifetime full of vain confidence, a bunch of incompetent projects that I've done, and a long learning curve, like I said. And a lot of overthinking and seeing the clout first instead of investing my time in the project that I'm doing, trying to learn it properly, trying to understand the process slowly by slowly of how I'm doing and learning these things. But no, I just wanted the clout and the results, so I did things half-assed. I took the shortcut, and I struggled with that for a long time. A long road of failed projects, anxiety, and because I kept failing, right? Like failed projects and all of that, I had a long road of anxiety, no self-confidence at all, being scared of failure, and a lot of people I've let down because of that. It wasn't until I was 21 years old I told myself, enough is enough. I want to get out of this pit hole I'm in. So I quit construction for a little bit, went back to school, and It wasn't any good. So I left school, went back into construction, but in a better position this time. Instead of a laborer, I was working machines a bit and still doing laboring, but like as more skilled stuff this time because I had experience. And I still got a bad experience at that, but this time I kind of went there with an open mind. I kind of went there less influenced from social media. Like, when I went to construction the first time, my brain was not in a good state. It was filled with dopamine rushes that I craved so badly. Those short dopamine rushes that you get from social media. You can't focus all the time because you have all these words, this knowledge, these flashy pictures coming at you. So I went to construction the first time with that kind of mindset, with a depressed, I don't care anymore mindset. I went to construction the second time and told myself, it's gonna be a learning experience this time. I'm gonna go in there with mental fortitude, with perseverance, and I'm gonna keep trying hard with absolute pure determination because I was so sick of where I was in life, of my mental health, of just destroying me all the time. I wanted to get out of that ruck. So I humbled myself basically through suffering from the toxicity again, the high stress, waking up every single day, even weekends I would work overtime, no breaks, and I also had to suffer a bit of an ego problem, seeing that everyone in a job site was better, faster, more competent than me. So I basically had to go through all that. Oh man, it's one hell of a thing when you're the worst person all the time at your job. You feel like you have no purpose, no value. It's a letdown, but it also humbles you, It humbles you to get better. And that's basically what happened with me. I taught myself to slow down mentally, really take into things, properly understand what's going on, properly invest in the learning curve, like learn properly, step by step, really take it in, really process, assess the situation. And then that led to me working consistently hard because I had an open mind now, and all I had to do was apply that mind into my body, and my body did the physical work consistently. I wasn't thinking about the time to go home anymore. I was thinking about getting the job done and getting it done properly because my mind was now open to learning things step by step. The process of doing that is really good. I learned how to work consistently hard because of that. Day would pass, day and day out, day in and day out, working construction in the rain, in the snow, in the hot sun, windy, all that stuff. No matter what, I had only one objective, and that was to keep moving forward with an open mind. And because I had an open mind and a consistent body, that developed into something called mental fortitude. Now not only did I have an open mind, it was no longer vulnerable. It was persevering through all the hardest things thrown at me. The toxicity didn't bother me anymore. It taught me how to have a strong mentality, how to persevere, and how to get out of my shell, basically. You have to get to the point in your life where every man has a breaking point, and every man has a boundary where they tell themselves enough is enough. That's just how we're built as humans. You have to adapt or we will slowly die and crumble. And to today's technology society with all these flashy images, everything granted at the hands of at our fingertips and everything, it's hard to see through your depression. It's hard to see through your like no purpose. I believe when you're pushed to the limit, you technically have the power to like reinvest in yourself, really like look inside yourself, your thinking, your situations, your history, and you got to ask yourself, is it worth it? I believe it's worth it. Well, that's what happened to me, but you got to ask yourself if it's worth it. Do you want to stay in that ruck forever? I didn't. I didn't want to stay in that ruck of not knowing what my purpose was, being depressed all the time, smoking weed, drinking all the time. Like, if it's for pleasure, why not, right? But if you're on a mission, if you're out to change the world, if you're out to change, you got to change yourself first. I mean, that's common sense. And as a man, I believe that's absolutely mandatory for every man to go through. You have to have that emotional and mental fortitude to do that in order to really change your life around and then eventually change the world. That's what I believe. The way I see it, I was in a mental rut, so bad that in order to wake up, I had to force myself to adapt through endless toxicity and physical and mental stress, which persisted for many years to finally decide that I was better than this. Through sheer willpower, through sheer willpower, to get out of that bullshit, I slowed down, took a look at myself, and started working on the areas I wasn't good at. That's what happened. When you know the hardship and consequences of your actions for such a long time, to the like when you're in a ruck and you know the consequences and the actions that come to you on a daily basis. You know it so well, inside and out. You know what will happen when you, for example, you sleep too long, you waste a day sleeping, taking a nap, thinking, shit, well, I could have done something today. Or you're playing so much video games, and then you see successful people on the internet, working on something so passionately. You would have been like, oh shit, I could have done something passionately. It's just that. It's just those little thoughts like that where you hate yourself for not doing something when you could have done it. It's thoughts like that that really want you to get out of the bullshit world. You know the consequences and hardships of procrastination, of lust. Well, I mean, of pornography or something like that. Of feeling shit after taking drugs or drinking alcohol, not because of leisure, but because you're trying to drown out all the thoughts. You know how shitty that is in the beginning. It takes a long time knowing the consequences and how you feel after that, inside and out, to finally say, fuck that, I'm tired of this bullshit. I want a different type of feeling. I knew that dopamine detoxing, if those you don't know what dopamine detoxing is, it's basically doing the long-term habits that would benefit you instead of the short-term habits that would basically not benefit you but make you feel good. That's basically what dopamine detoxing is. You don't want your dopamine to keep spiking up all the time, and for a short amount of time, just because it makes you feel happy now. You want to basically work on yourself, but you want to have a dopamine rush that lasts a long time, basically, because you put in the work in yourself. So invest in long-term activities so that you can enjoy it in the long term. Like you go to the gym, maybe a year and a half from now, you have the body of a Roman god, and that's gonna make you happy and confident for a long time. You gotta start thinking long term rather than short, right? And that's basically my history on my work habits and my way of thinking from back then. So that's basically the history, and because of that history, I become more or less a workaholic. Every day I get up, I start working long hours on this type of content. And during the weekdays, I'm working construction still. Better position than I was 2 years ago, but still same work ethic. I get up in the morning, and I'm working with my uncles, right? So I drive my uncle to the construction site, or at least I used to. My van broke down, so that's unfortunate. But because I developed the mental fortitude, the emotional stability, and the persevering work ethic, both physically and mentally, from my history, I'm able to work better. Every day, there's always a task that I'm fully focused on. Sure, my learning curve is still not the best, but it's getting better, and I've noticed that. And that's the beauty of being a human. Learning things that you didn't know about, and really using that learning to put into use into your life. Getting new experiences. It's a beautiful thing, to be honest. Yeah, sometimes there are times where, yeah, I still procrastinate a bit. I'm not exactly perfect yet, but the beauty of being a human is you can always keep improving. And that's what I love about being human. That's what I love about life in general. You can always better yourself with everything. And that's what I intend to do with this channel, basically. I intend to put a great amount, a relentless amount of effort into producing content for you guys that hopefully helps you. And hopefully I intend on improving too. Like, as you can tell, the way I talk, I'm still kind of nervous. I still stutter a bit. I still got to work on it, basically. So, yeah, I hope this helped you. This is basically an overview of basically being a teenager or a kid and a teenager that grew up in an environment where so much knowledge was getting into your brain to the point where you had everything at your fingertips. Technology was flashing in and out of your face to the point where you couldn't focus and you had to suffer the consequences of that. That's basically what my whole life was about. I mean, I don't know what children and teenagers are now like with the whole. I mean, social media has grew so much more than when I was a teenager and a kid. You got TikTok, you got OnlyFans, I think, or whatever. And even dating is a lot harder these days. And I'm a victim of that as well. uh, but anyway, the main message I really want to give is try not to get distracted. Really look into yourself. Look at nature, for God's sake. Slow down. And then when the time comes where you're under pressure and it's time to speed up, you will have the capacity to think properly. Slow down, look at yourself. Hell, maybe meditate or pray. Pray if you're religious, meditate if you're not religious. Just like really clear your mind. Really be self-aware of what's going on in your head, both good and bad. And then find a way to correct it and move forward and keep finding ways to improve your life and keep moving forward. Because that's what life is all about. Your ancestors, like, think about it this way. Your ancestors fought all these primal animals, all these other tribes, just to stay alive, just to produce your bloodline. And then over the generations, collapses of civilizations, endless famine, diseases, wars, going through the Civil War, World War One, World War Two, Vietnam, Gulf War, all that stuff. Generations and generations of your bloodline suffering. And it's all up to you. You have all that weight now. You could be either make your ancestors proud that and not regret surviving and producing the next generation of your bloodline to you. You could either make them not regret that or completely fail your ancestors. The way I see it, your ancestors did not survive all that shit just to get you into a mental rut to the point where you're doing nothing for the rest of your life. Keep doing something. Keep working on something. Every human, I believe, is smart. Even those humans with low IQ, that every human is smart enough to take control of their own life and basically put it on a path where they can have a good amount of control to the point where they can be strong mentally and physically. There's no excuse for being in a ruck, especially with all these gadgets. Like, take advantage of the gadgets you have, the technology. Use it in the right way. You got everything at your disposal. Or if you don't, your ancestors and all that stuff, they figured things out. You have the power to figure things out as well. That's what I believe. That's basically my work habit history and the way I think and the way I approach things today. I approach things with an open mind, but not vulnerable mind. I approach them with mental fortitude and everything. I don't do things because I feel like doing them. I do things because I have to. It's a duty as a man to do that, and it always has been. Why do you think when you go to work, there are many men that are just waiting in their cars, waiting for work to start? They're the first ones on site. They're the last ones to leave because it's their duty to do their job. No one's gonna do it. And same thing with you. If you don't do what you want to do, or if you don't do what you're supposed to do, what you believe you're supposed to do, no one's gonna do it for you. The universe is not that. The universe is indifferent to how you feel, but the universe will acknowledge when you do something and put your actions and legacies in it. Your emotions won't last a long time, but your actions will. Just think about it like that. And that's basically how I put my work habits. That's how I see my work habits. It's not about the emotion that comes with it. It's about the action. It's about taking action and sticking to it all the way till the end. And not half-assing it too. You do it competently, step by step, each step being perfect. An example of this I'm going to probably go through is I'm going to have to edit a lot of this. I stuttered a bunch. So I hope you got some insight out of this. I'm still trying to figure out how to talk with this whole podcast thing. I'm not perfect at this at all. I had a lot of brain clogs in here, a bunch of information in my brain and just my mouth spewing it out all at once, not making sense. So, anyway, yeah, I got a lot to edit with this one, but I hope you enjoyed that podcast. With this, again, this topic is my work habits, my work ethics. So, I'll see you in the next video. Thank you for listening.